Hello and welcome to our webinar covering how to optimize your lab management with Bluehill Central. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Nick Erickson, your host for this webinar. Today I'm joined by Robert Griffith, one of our product specialists. In this role, Robert focuses on Instron's aftermarket accessories for universal testing machines, which includes all of our static testing software, our grips, our extensometers, pretty much everything else that can be added to our test frames. He's here to talk about Bluehill Central, Instron's new lab management software. He'll discuss how it can help ensure the testing in your lab is being performed correctly and ways you can save time through remote management of the Instron systems across your labs. We expect the presentation should take around 45-ish minutes. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A icon on your platform to submit these at any time. We're going to address these at the end. I also want to mention that we are recording this webinar and that you will receive a link to the recording afterwards. It'll also be available on our website, instron.com. And with that said, I'll turn things over to Robert to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nick, for the introduction. Like Nick said, my name is Robert Griffith. I am a product specialist with Instron. And today I wanted to go through some information about Bluehill Central, which is the latest software platform or tool that Instron has released back in early 2022. So I have a couple slides I'm going to share with everyone to cover some high-level concepts associated with the software, but the bulk of today's webinar is going to be spent actually in the software going through some example workflows of the most common things that customers have done in the software and some of its common use cases. So I'm going to share my screen. Great. So like I said, I'm here today to talk about Bluehill Central. I think a good place to start is kind of a very high-level overview of what Bluehill Central is. We try to condense its description down to like kind of one sentence. And the way that we talk about it is Bluehill Central is a lab management tool that enables you to remotely manage your Instron files, users, settings for all of your Instron systems in a centralized location. Kind of the short summary of how this works is behind the scenes of Bluehill Universal is there's a server that houses all of those Instron files. Any users of your Bluehill software, as well as any settings that can be managed for your Instron system, are all kind of housed and managed and stored on this server. And all that information is then communicated to the Bluehill Universal installations in your lab. And then you can access and manage the same information from our new Bluehill Central application, which is usually installed on your personal laptop, or maybe a centralized computer or desktop PC within the lab. But within Bluehill Central itself, kind of the application focusing on what you can manage and do with the software. We have our first module, which is our settings. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's where you can manage the different settings related to users of the Bluehill software, permissions that they have within the software, like what they can and cannot do. Can people edit methods? Can they delete data? Can they override where data is saved, as well as some overarching settings that apply to kind of the general use of the system and what type of workflows you would want to either force or not force with a specific setup. The next two modules are currently come bundled together, usually because there's a lot of overlap and kind of interlinking of how those modules can work together. Those are our lab management and our traceability modules. The lab management module is our solution for managing Bluehill files. So this is anything from test methods that you want to make sure are shared across all your Instron systems. It serves as a single storage location for files exported from the Bluehill Universal software. So CSV files, PDF reports, sample files themselves. As well as report templates for your PDF reports are all managed and stored on our server, and kind of the organization and structure of it is all through lab management. Traceability is our internal compliance tool that has a lot of functionality built into it to help you meet various compliance needs or regulatory needs, whether those be from an external body like the FDA or NADCAP, or if you have internal audit requirements or internal process requirements. For revision control is a pretty common one. Traceability has a lot of functionality built in for how you manage file revision and revision control, as well as an automatic electronic audit trail that records kind of all of the major information you want to know about how your software is being used in the case you ever need it for an audit. And then the last module is our trend tracker module. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is a module we've had around for a couple of years now, but with the release of Bluehill Central, we kind of added a little bit of functionality to it and brought it underneath the Bluehill Central hood. And Trend Tracker is our, again, kind of our off-the-shelf tool for results analysis. So this is looking at multiple batches of data over a long period of time, maybe across multiple locations if you have labs in, let's say, multiple states or multiple countries, and then aggregating them into one viewable window so that you can run some basic trend analysis on your results over a given period of time for a certain part number, certain lot, however you want to view the data. So that's kind of the summary of all of the modules at a really high level. We'll get into more detail about what each of them are capable of doing with some common workflows in a couple minutes. But to kind of talk about how Bluehill Central all works, I kind of said at the start of this that there's a server that kind of operates in the background where a lot of this information is stored. So Bluehill Central uses what is called a client/server network, or a client/server architecture, where you can store all of the shared data, files, and settings into a Microsoft SQL Server database. That's about as nuts and bolts as I'm going to get into like the IT side of things of what's going on in the background, but you can think of it at a high level as, again, server that then connects various components to share information. One of those first components being the your Instron systems in your lab and those Bluehill Universal installations. So Bluehill Universal software, it's the software that runs your Instron system. It is able to connect to the Bluehill Central server in order to send data files that are generated, as well as access, let's say, test methods that you've stored there. So you want to make sure those test methods are being used on those systems. It can pull them from the server, can store data on the server. It's where it goes to look for the most recent settings and most recent user configurations. So all of the information is being both pulled from the server, and also any updates made on the Bluehill side are being pushed to the server, so that then they can be connected to all the other Instron's lab, or all the other Instron systems. The next component is going to be the Bluehill Central application itself. So this is a second piece of software that you would install on typically your work laptop at your desk or your office PC. Maybe your lab has a centralized computer in the lab itself that is used to run and kind of manage the information of that lab. That is also a great place to install it. But again, the idea is you can modify information on that computer, have that be sent to the Bluehill Central server, and then have that info be cascaded down to all of your Instron systems. And again, this data center in the middle that is the bridge between everything is this Bluehill server and Microsoft SQL database. And the way that it all connects is via your corporate network and your corporate domain. So yeah, that's kind of a really high level IT infrastructure of how this works. If you have any other questions about kind of in more detail what's going on behind the scenes, I'm happy to answer those. But for now, I'm going to move on to this next portion, which is a new concept that we've introduced to Bluehill when we talk about Bluehill Central. In the development of this product, we heard back from a lot of customers that when our equipment is being used in a lab, it's often being used by multiple groups of people for different types of functionality or different types of workflows. The most common example we came across was a R&D team, or like a product development team, using the Instron system to create new test methods, test new product that was being developed. They need to use the Instron system pretty freely. Like they need to be able to edit things. They wanted to be able to delete information quickly without any sort of hurdles or checks in place. So their workflow wasn't necessarily limited. The other side of that equation was the production team or quality control team that is often using the same pieces of equipment for very highly regulated or controlled testing. So you can think maybe like a manufacturing team is using the Instron equipment to run validated, approved methods on specific product before it gets shipped out the door. They need to make sure that people can't edit methods, can't delete data, can't do anything that would basically harm data integrity. And so a lot of times these two teams would be at odds with each other when they were trying to use the same equipment, because there wasn't the flexibility to kind of set up these two, you can think of it like different testing environments. And so that's where the concept of teams came into play. So at a really high level, Bluehill Central allows you to group users together into organized teams where they share common files and common settings. Again, that R&D setting, that's a little more free-flowing. Their settings are less restricted. They can test, they can edit, they can delete. Whereas on the production side, you're not only limiting what they can do in the software, but you're also probably limiting what files they have access to. So you're limiting them to only validated test methods or controlled test methods. And you want to make sure those files are separate from the R&D team, so the R&D team doesn't accidentally edit like a validated method. So this is where, again, teams comes into play. So it's a way of grouping your individual members with each member in a different group having personalized permissions, files, so methods, reports, results, settings. The audit trails are also separated and organized by team, and kind of grouping kind of you want to organize your test systems in your lab itself. From a usability perspective, when you're using Bluehill Universal, there's only one thing that really changes, and that's what happens when you go to log into the software. So there's a screen grab from the software, and you'll see it again in a minute. But what we've added is just one bar when you go to open Universal and you're forced to log in with a username and password. It gives you a new drop-down menu where you also select the team that you want to log into. In this picture, I'm showing the production team, and in this next kind of live demonstration example, I'll go through this production R&D dichotomy that I was talking about. So with that, those are kind of all the slides I wanted to cover, and I'm going to jump into the actual software itself. So this is Bluehill Universal, or excuse me, this is Bluehill Central. This is the separate application that is typically installed on your laptop or your desktop PC, maybe against your centralized lab computer. And again, here are your four main modules: lab management, traceability, trend tracker, and settings. I think the first thing I want to usually highlight with this is going to be the lab management side of things. So if I click into lab management, this is again where you get that file folder structure that I was talking about for you to organize your files. Default, it comes pre-built with two folders, and generic output and a generic templates folder. These are customizable. You can edit, you can add, you can remove, you can rename, you can nest more folders underneath each other. It's up to you to how you want to organize it. Very similar to like your standard Windows File Explorer system right now. But what we have right here is a generic output folder. So this is what I have used to store various results over the course of the last couple of months from demo testing I've done. So you can see I have this first example right here is from February 8th. I have the sample file, the PDF report, and the CSV file from this specific batch of testing that I exported. Underneath the templates folder is where I've uploaded specific approved test methods for this team so that anyone who logs into Universal under the production team has access to these methods and these methods only. So it's the approved production compression and the approved production tension method. And then this is the report template file that both of those test methods reference. So this is where you can upload files to your various teams. So you can organize them upload them directly from your local hard drive or from a local or a shared network drive if you have information stored there as well. It's just a matter of navigating to where you have that file stored and then clicking upload down here. So you can upload methods and change what people or what files a specific team has access to via lab management. On the Bluehill Universal side of things, what that looks like when a user goes to access the information is, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to first log into the software and they're going to pick a team that they want to use. For today's sake, we're just going to stick to either the production or the R&D team. If we go into production, I'm going to have my user Allison log into the software with her username and password, and she's logged in underneath the production team. If she were to go into test, what you'll notice first off is the most recently used methods are just those two methods that this team has access to: the approved production tension, approved production compression. And then just confirming that even more, if she clicks on the Browse Methods button, it's going to open up this Bluehill Central file directory. And you're going to see, again, this is exactly what we were looking at on the other screen. Output doesn't have anything in it because I don't have any test methods in it. And then templates has, again, those two test methods that were uploaded to the Bluehill Central server. So it's only, or anyone who logs into this team only has access to those files. Now, if we want to compare that to R&D, I can take my user Allison, same person, log in under a different team, so R&D. And then this time when she goes into test, we can see, okay, the methods are different. We have what I've called R&D tension, compression, peel. And then same thing if I go into this Browse Methods button, you can see here the output files, again, empty because I'm looking specifically for methods. I don't have them stored there. And then my templates are just these three methods. So again, this is kind of where you see the first introductory of teams and segmenting your files based on which team is using the software. The teams are customizable. You can make them be organized however you want. Could be production, quality, R&D, manufacturing. You can structure them maybe instead of it being department level, it's on like a project basis. So some people are using the software, so each individual project they're working on has its own team, and all the files associated with that project are only on that team. It's up to you guys how you want to create and edit these teams and organize files. There's no limit to how many teams you can make. So I guess from a actual file creation standpoint, what I can show is just a quick run through of what it looks like to generate test data. So Allison's going to be logged in underneath the production team, and she's going to run a test using the approved tension test method. She's going to go in here and modify these various inputs. I've created some very generic inputs just that for part number, specimen type, she's going to run a specimen. Bluehill Universal is going to generate the data, record all the results I told it to record based on the method in the background. And then I'm just going to run the one specimen just for today's sake and finish that. So yeah, generating my results, cool. My one test, I'm done. Just like a user does right now, if they click the finish sample button, it's going to pop up the location that they can save the file. So in this case, because we're using Bluehill Central, instead of it saving it to like a local Windows location or a network Windows location, it's saving it to your Bluehill Central server. I can name this file, just call it like afternoon 5:17 testing. Click save. And this is where I am going to see maybe a newer screen that isn't as familiar for people here. So this is a preview of what exactly is about to be saved before you create the files themselves. So because I'm operating under the production team, which is my more tightly controlled or regulated team, I am requiring that anytime someone does testing, they have to put an electronic signature on the PDF report and on the sample file saying that it was me. I was like, I'm the user Allison. I did this testing on this date at this time. I certified that the results are accurate. And then I can stamp my name on it. So that's what this signature required down here is. It's just Allison typing in her password she uses to get into Bluehill Universal. That's what the signature is within the software. And what she gets to see as well is a preview of the PDF report. Pretty simple, just the one result, some basic information at the top about the test. And then also she sees what we've called the pending changes to the sample file. So that includes when the sample was created, any sort of value that was modified. So changing part number to 6TB from it previously being blank, selecting the drop-down menu option A when previously it was auto-selected as none, and then running one test. So you can get a sense of, if you ever wanted to look at these changes, you can see exactly how this testing was done and see if anything was modified before or after you test an individual specimen. So Allison's going to click save after putting in her password. And what it's going to do is it's going to create all those files on the Bluehill Central server. Let's say we have another, let's say a manager named Megan wants to access the information that Allison just created from her testing. What Megan can do is open the Bluehill Central application on her laptop or the central PC, whatever it is. She can log in using her credentials. And then if she clicks into lab management and looks at the output folder, she can scroll down and see, okay, there right here are the 3 files we just generated, the afternoon 517 testing, where it has the sample file, the PDF report, and the CSV file that I told the software to make. And if she wants to, she can download this PDF file directly from the server onto her computer. So she just clicks this download button right here. It's going to successfully download it. It just gets stored directly to your downloads folder of the computer you're on. And then she can open the file. And you get to see, here's that preview of the PDF report with Allison's electronic signature up here at the top, as well as tape graph, table results, all the information that she cares about. So kind of a quick workflow of showing you how you can access data and results remotely from Bluehill Central rather than having to pull directly from the computer that is attached to the frame or pulling from like a network drive or from a file folder system locally. So that's kind of the pushing and pulling of files to the Bluehill Universal software. Another example of this is if we wanted to edit a test method. So editing for all files still has to, or editing of all methods still has to take place in Bluehill Universal. So this user, Allison, is still logged into the software. She's going to go into the method tab. She's going to open this method file, and she's going to make a couple quick changes to it just to show some of this workflow. So I'm going to add a yield calculation. I'm going to make it an offset yield calculation and then tie it to modulus. I'm going to change the speed of the test. So I'll just make this kind of arbitrarily 250 millimeters a minute. And then underneath the workspace, I want to add that yield result that I just added. So I'm going to say force, I'm going to say the force at yield. What's that piece of information? So just made a series of changes to this test method. She added a new calculation, changed the speed that the test was run at. And what she's going to do here is click and save and close. So click the finish flag like she's used to doing. And it's going to open up kind of a new box, a new dialog box that maybe you don't currently have with your Bluehill Universal software. First thing again is you get the list of pending changes for this specific file. So similar to the sample file within Bluehill Universal, test methods also have this change log associated with them. And so you get to see exactly how this method was modified in this instance or this like sit down period of going to change it. So you can see she added a yield calculation. So it's always top to bottom chronological. So added a yield calculation, changed the type to offset, put the parent calculation as modulus. She changed the speed of the test from 350 millimeters a minute to 250 millimeters a minute. And then she just made sure that the results table was showing the 4-set yield. So at this point, Allison can sign off with her, again, with her password, serves as her electronic signature. And then this time, instead of clicking save to just like save the method file and it's good to go, I've set up that anytime something is modified in the production environment, that it has to undergo a second, or has to undergo an approval process. So like a second set of eyes takes a look at it. The idea being here is you don't want to modify your test methods or your test parameters without making sure that both an engineer making the modification and maybe a manager looks at the changes and make sure that makes sense with what you're trying to accomplish. And so in the meantime, while that test method is pending a change, you're actually not able to use it within the software because it's recognizes the fact that it's supposed to have 2 signatures on it. And right now it only has the 1. And so anytime you want to run a test method that hasn't been approved, you're going to not be able to. So this limits users from running a test with an unapproved test method. So it says obtain the necessary signatures before testing or analysis can proceed. Click OK. Going to kick you back to the screen we were just on. At this point in time, we can go back to Bluehill Central. So back to Megan being in her office on her laptop with Bluehill Central. She's logged in, and this is where we're going to see kind of the first element of traceability come into play. Where when she goes into traceability, this reviews panel that you open to for the first time is going to show all pending reviews that need to be done. So anything that you require 2 or 3 levels of signatures on will list here, waiting for someone who is able to do the review to look over the changes and approve it. So with this, you get the date and time that something was changed. You get the user who did it. You see the file and where it's stored, that it's pending a secondary signature. And you also would see the system ID that this is modified on. So if you have 5 systems in your lab, you would see the unique system ID that this was done on. So you could see if it was done on your single column frame, your floor model frame, dual column frame, whichever one you're using, you'll be able to see right there. And then you also get to see the pending changes that have been made that are waiting on approval. So Megan sees the exact same information that Allison saw before she signed off, date, time. This is going to be revision 23 of this test method. So the 23rd time that it's been saved or revised. And then that the user Allison is the person who made the changes and then gets to see all of the stuff that changed about the method. Megan can then say, all right, that makes sense to me. I'm going to approve it. And type in her password as well. Click approve. And now that that method is approved, if I switch back to Bluehill Universal, again, Allison is the user logged into Bluehill Universal at this point in time. She goes to open the test method, and it's going to be the same process we had at the start of the demonstration, where she can now create data, and you can see that these changes have been in place, have been approved, so they're in place. So you can see there's your change in test speed as an example. So yeah, that's kind of just one of the optional workflows that we see is kind of the most common use cases within Bluehill Central is approvals to modifying methods. You can set up your signature requirements to force 2 signatures for methods if you would like. If you want to make it a little more streamlined and you just have 1, so just the person making the change signs off on it and they have to put like a justification for why they do it, that's also possible. If you wanted to, you would require no signatures and still have the audit trail in the background capturing everything and still have the revision history capturing everything. You just wouldn't have the review process in place or any of the signatures. So this is customizable. You can make it as strict or as free-flowing as you would like. And this is where you can kind of modify your traceability settings for the entire team. And once they're modified in Bluehill Central, where we're at right now, that change gets pushed to all of your Instron systems. So it allows you to make a change in one location, have it reflected across, let's say, all 5 of your Instron frames, rather than having to go to frame 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. and make the same individual change within Bluehill Universal. And then, like I mentioned, all of the stuff that all like the major actions you take within the software are going to be recorded within the audit trail if you ever need it for audit purposes. So you get all of the critical things like when various files are created. So this is the testing I just did. We have the CSV file, the sample file itself. Again, here's that revision history, so you can see exactly how this testing was done. You get the PDF report, again, with the preview of the electronic signature. You can see then that Allison modified a test method. So that's what we were just showing. She modified it in Bluehill Universal on the system ID, whatever it would say here, shows you the computer was done on. And then it shows you then that Megan conducted a review of that same file. She approved it. And the file was approved via Bluehill Central, and it shows you the computer that it was done on as well. So this would say like Megan's computer name. And again, all of this is done all within the production team so that when you are using any of your multiple systems in your Instron lab, all under the production team, it's funneling all the audit trail information into one location rather than having it siloed across multiple systems. So it kind of gives you a good chronological order of how exactly your equipment in your lab is being used. And if it ever gets overwhelming, you can always filter down to maybe just the things you care about. So you can uncheck various items of what you'd want to look at. And you can also look maybe only over certain periods of time as well if you wanted to filter the audit trail that way. So stores a lot of information, but you can also look at whatever subsect of it that you want to look at. So that's kind of the lab management traceability side of things. Next up I want to talk about is going to be Trend Tracker. Trend Tracker is our kind of off-the-shelf trend analysis statistical process control tool for your Instron results that come out of Bluehill Universal. The way that it works in the background is you have, again, a Microsoft SQL database that is getting results pushed to it from Bluehill Universal. And then what Bluehill Central is doing is looking into that database, and you are building a custom search that says, I want to look for results only over a certain period of time. Maybe it's related to a specific part number. Maybe I want all of my specimens that were considered fails over the past 6 months to get an analysis of them. However you have your data organized is accessible via the Trend Tracker database. The first thing I usually like to show is kind of how does this information get there? So if I open up, I'll show you the data file that we use kind of for this demonstration. Is this data file, which is 150 specimens large. So it has, I'm going to do, there we go. So it has 150 specimens tested on it with various pieces of information listed here in the results table. I have theoretically the location that the testing was done at, the operator that did the testing, some lab environment conditions, dimensions for the specimens, as well as the 3 results that I care about, and then whether or not this specimen was considered a pass or a fail. And I believe I have that tied to ultimate tensile strength. The way that the Bluehill Universal software knows how to put this into Trend Tracker is underneath the method tab and then exports. And then if you're utilizing Trend Tracker and you have the module for it, this button will pop up here. And then it's just a very simple toggle switch. So if I want to put data into a Trend Tracker database, I toggle this on, and then I click from the drop-down menu, whichever database I have connected. In this case, I have one called production. And then I tell it what information to put into the database. The only pieces of information that we can put into it are whatever you have stored in the results table 1. So in this case, that's what I have here. It's my results 1 table, whole bunch of info, some various specimen inputs, operator inputs, results themselves generated by the software, a lot of different information. Anything results table 2, mine is currently blank. And then anything that you deem as a method parameter. Method parameters are pretty straightforward in general. They're anything from the name of the method you used, the test date, the system ID you're running on. There's a whole bunch of options of what you can include as a method parameter. I've included these 3 basic items as my parameters so that I want to put into the database alongside the results. So you just tell it what you want to put into the database from these 3 options. And then whenever you click the finish button, what that's going to do is automatically push these results and that information to the trend tracker database. What you can then do is, let's say, like Megan, she's at her desk. She's gone through the process of looking at a PDF report. She approved some changes to a test method. Now next on her list is to look at, let's say, some testing that was recently done. She clicks into Trend Tracker, and then I'm going to run a saved search that I have currently. What she can do is open this search that she's already created once and saved. And what it'll do is it'll run again and pull all of the information that meet the parameters that she's defined. The parameters up here are just test date. So this is looking for all tested specimens that were tested on or before the 8th of February, 2023. You can customize what this operator is, whether it's on, after, before, between 2 dates, if you wanted to look over a specific date range. And you can also add other search criteria that pair with the last test date. So for example, if I know I only want to look at testing on or before today, or not today, but the 8th, and then I want to look at testing that was done at the Phoenix site. So I can type in like PH, it's going to look for the Phoenix site. Next time I click run, it's going to, oh, I said on or after. I meant to do on or before. There we go. It's going to pull up just the 50 specimens that I have from my Phoenix, Arizona location. If I wanted to look at everything at the Phoenix, Arizona location, but that was only a fail, so I want to look at only my failed data on this date at this location, if I click run again, it's going to show me, all right, here's my one result that I have that was considered failed. And so I can get a sense of, all right, how is the testing being done at that location? Are we going to notice any sort of concerns or problems? So yeah, the searching field is pretty easy to customize. You can make it as granular as you want or as wide ranging as you would like. And when you go to first conduct your search, what you're going to end up getting is a lot of information kind of just in this table on its own. But then where you can start to kind of get a better sense of how things can be grouped or organized is by taking any of your column headers, and you can take it, click and drag it up here to this gray row. And once it's up there, that is now something that the data is grouped by. So what it's going to do is it's going to find all unique locations and group all of the test data by location. Let's say I wanted to, instead of group by location, I wanted to group by operator. I can see, all right, here are now my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 operators. Yeah, 10, 11, 12. So like a lot of different operators across multiple sites. So you can see, all right, how many tests are being done by each person. You can also nest groupings. So if I have location, and then specifically I want to see operators by location, you can look at everything under the Jakarta, Indonesia location, seeing what Sarah, Kevin, Sharon, and Henry have tested. You can look at just location, it's up to you. So any piece of information that's up here that you want to group by is also available. Let's say I want to add my pass-fail criteria to it. What I can do is click this edit columns button above my search, pull over the information that I'm looking for. So I also want to say, all right, include pass-fail. Click OK. I now have pass-fail. And if I want to group on by location, see what's passed and what's failed at each location, I can start to condense this and see, all right, here's all of my information about what's passed and what's failed at the various locations. So 2 fails total, 1 at Phoenix, 1 at Mexico City. If you expand all of this, you can get a better sense of, all right, what exactly are the results? What do they look like? So let me expand that. There you go. So I can see, all right, here's all of my passes. Here are all of the fails from that one location. See, right here is that failed specimen at the Phoenix location. 13 megapascals is the ultimate tensile strength, lower than what I want. And so maybe I can start to investigate with Robert at the Mexico City location. Hey, when you were doing this testing, what happened? Was this an outlier? Something we need to be concerned about? And kind of get a better sense of the trend that might be occurring. So in addition to this table view, you can also chart the information that you pull up. So all of this data that I had in this table, I can also chart into either group charts or individual charts. So this is an example of just a run chart that I've created for all of the ultimate tensile strength readings. I've toggled on some pretty basic upper and lower control limits. If I wanted to put in any sort of acceptance criteria that I know I have, so let's say it's 100 and 100 are my upper and lower. I know that's what my method dictates. I can say, all right, what has fallen out of my acceptance criteria across my 3 locations? It's just these 2 results. And so I can go back into the table and dig down and say, all right, here's what the 2 results are. Is this a trend? Looks like these are just outliers. We're probably fine. But it gives you some confidence in knowing exactly what the results look like based on location. So yeah, we have some run charts that you can add, some basic group charts like a box plot as well. These are pretty off because of the outliers currently displayed. So yeah, just a lot of different charting capability and functionality within the software itself. All of these searches or any modifications that you make to a search can also be saved for future use so that you don't have to recreate this every time. So that's just done over here by clicking the save button in the right-hand corner. I've already have it saved, so I'm just going to overwrite it and save the new version. And so next time I go in, it's going to have all of the same edits that I just made, so I don't have to do it again. And this time, maybe I only modify the value of the date range I'm looking for, or maybe a specific part number if I'm looking at only part numbers. Kind of up to you and how you have your data organized. So that's the trend tracker module. I think that's pretty much it from what I wanted to cover from a kind of workflow overview of the major actions that you can take within the software. I think at this point in time, what I'll do is I'll take a stab at the Q&As that have come in. I got 2 questions here. The first one is, how do you make the report display which team generated the data? Great question. So if you want to see who's who has generated test data, that's going to be a modification to the report template itself. So within Bluehill Universal, if I want to open up, I believe I can do it in this one. Just going to run a dummy test. All right, so this preview should now populate some results. There you go. So one way of doing it is just you can get that same information by looking at the type of method that was used. So right here underneath my PDF report, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. I have these are what I've called my method parameters. And so what I've included are the method name that is being used. So it shows you that this method is underneath the production team, and that it's the approved production tension method. So that's one way of looking at it. I believe there's also an input for method parameters that shows the Okay, so you're able to show the user. So yeah, I think that's the best way of getting the team itself that was generated is by adding the name of the method, because the name of the method includes the team in it. That's probably the easiest way of getting it. Maybe the method description as well. If you write out a description for your specific method file, if you have any text there, that'll show it there. A couple of different ways that you could add it to the PDF report itself. Cool. So that was question 1. Question 2 is, can you sign review of data on the Bluehill Central software, or do you have to do that through Universal? So that is all done through Bluehill Central. So you do it through this application right here. So let's say I was requiring data to be reviewed. I can show quickly kind of what this workflow would look like instead. So instead, let's say I'll just do the PDF report because it's the easiest. I'll say, all right, here's 2 signatures. I now need 2 signatures for PDFs. Megan can leave a comment, sign off on it. So made a change to how the testing is done. So I'm going to go back to Universal. So this is Bluehill Central, back to Universal. Just going to run through the same test method again really quick. And I just run a demo data file, and click finish. All right, so clicking finish pulls up the menu where you want to save it, just the output folder. Should call this demo data, just an example. And then right here is going to be the PDF report. Again, in the preview, Allison is the first signature, so she will sign off on it with her password. Click save. So that's going to get the first electronic signature onto the report of the results. And then now what's going to happen is so Megan is at her computer in her office, she logs in. If she goes into traceability now, what we're going to see here is a pending secondary signature requirement where this demo data report was displayed. So Megan can take a look at it, make sure that everything stacks up correctly, makes sense. Then she clicks approve, signs off on it, again, remotely from her desk, rather than she doesn't have to walk up to the system. She does this all from her desk. And then she clicks, if you click into the audit trail, you can see here the create action for the PDF report. So that's the file that was just created. And you can see the preview shows you both signatures, shows you the person who did it, and then the secondary signature as well. So primary, secondary signature, and shows kind of the levels of approval for this for these results as well. So again, the approval process and reviewing the data all happens within Bluehill Central, generating the data still on the system, still on Bluehill Universal. Okay, then the third question we have is, when saving the test file, can it be saved to a shared drive or just Bluehill Central? So the answer to this question can be a little complicated. It kind of depends on how you want to configure your team. The short answer is, if you are requiring an approval process for test files, so you want test data to be approved by or signed off by an individual, either by the person running the testing data or the person running the data and the person reviewing it, you have to save that information to the Bluehill Central server, because otherwise there's no way that the software knows that that specific data file needs to be signed off on. If you don't have signature requirements in place, you can pull a test method from Bluehill Central and then save results to like a Windows network drive or a shared drive. It doesn't have to be into the server, the Bluehill Central server. Basically, it's when you have signature requirements in place is when we have to force it to the Bluehill Central server, because otherwise we have no way of ensuring that the signature process actually happens. So kind of a little bit of a multi-step answer to that. Kind of depends on how you want to use it. And so you can also set up, this kind of gets back to the 2 different team structure, where you could set up a team that is only allowed to save things to the server, so that they're signed off on, they're reviewed, they're controlled. And then you can have another team set up that they can save it to a network drive if you would like as well. So if you have maybe a controlled environment you need to operate in, and then a more free-flowing one, great example of how you can modify where things get saved as well. So that was the last question that we had, which is good because I think we're coming up on time. So that's all I have for you guys for this afternoon. I think what I'll do is I'll kick it back over to Nick to round us out.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Before I wrap things up, I just have a few quick notes, and thank you for putting up your contact info, Rob. I was just going to ask you for that. Reminder to everybody, we did record this session, so each of you will receive a link to the recording that you can watch or share at a later time. You also see a survey once we close out the webinar. We'd really appreciate your feedback on today's presentation. The last thing I want to mention is you can always find the latest upcoming and on-demand webinars on our website. I'm actually going to drop a link into the chat there. So if you'd like to check out what's available, you can. And then with that said, I just want to say thanks again to Robert for presenting today, and thanks to all of you for attending. Really appreciate you joining us, and we hope you can join us at a future webinar. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.